Part 28. The Albany VA Medical Center was under investigation. The investigation has uncovered multiple crimes and violations that have put patients' lives at risk. It is so frustrating what we're going through, to say the least. Ash was in such a pain he had to ask me to ask again for the nurses to come. I went there and she was ticked off like I was thinking she was to be. After she came back and wanted to give morphine to Ash, this stupid imbecile, I told her Ash would die because they tried it about 2.5 weeks ago and he almost died, remember? Is anybody there? That's a real battlefield and Ash's life is in jeopardy for sure. Even though I told her my husband would die, she came back saying to Ash, "You are refusing to take the morphine." This was a quote. And I replied, "He is not refusing to take morphine. He knows fully well he will die if he would take it." In other words, he was not refusing help. He was just refusing to be destroyed. He even went as far as asking me to call the previous floor, where he was the 8th floor, to ask to a doctor because he was in such excruciating pain. I thought he would die because of the pain. I finally called on the phone the previous floor and they told me they are not taking care of him anymore because he's now at the intensive care unit. Right? Just a fucking maze, that's what it was. And it happened something else, as if this would not be enough. Believe it or not, that what brought back Ash from coma is that I spoke to my husband while he was in the coma because I knew that in his subconscious Ash would understand that I was caring for him just like I used to be caring about him. So I was talking to him just like he was conscious because when he was coma he could have died and I wanted to prevent that to happen, so his death was postponed again because he finally died. A nurse was called to take care of Ash, but she told us up front she was to take care of other patients. She was ticked off as well. To give you an idea, my husband said, sorry about that. He was saying that he was feeling about to vomit after receiving this painkiller. Her answer was, quote, "Close your mouth and breathe through your nose," end of the quote, and quote, "Concentrate on your respiration," end of the quote. And she told Ash to not talk to me at all, like he would be a little boy. So, because Ash wanted to get rid of the thing he thought he needed to vomit in the bag, while the painkiller was beginning to work, he asked me to remove it. In other words, he had less nausea, so he wanted me to remove the bag. Just because he said that, she told him if he would talk to me again, she would throw his wife out of the room, so I decided to leave before that would happen and come later when she was gone. If she is not happy, Mrs. Superior just had to go back to India, and this was part 28. The Albany VA Medical Center was under investigation. Part 29. Remember, it's all rights reserved. You have no permission to copy in whole or in part. October 16, 2006. I realized this morning when they inserted a 3.5-inch tube in Ash's body to first his belly, second his lungs. And I want to remind you that the investigation has uncovered multiple crimes and violations that have put many patients' lives at risk, while my late husband was there. November 16, 2006. I realized this morning when they inserted a 3.5-inch tube in Ash's body to first his belly, second his lungs, they could use fentanyl as a painkiller. The one that at first my husband felt he was about to vomit. Read part 28 or listen to it. Why I know that? Because yesterday night Ash had a very huge pain, and I told them to not use morphine, even though it was what the nurse and the doctor available at the intensive care unit wanted to use. They finally figured something out. Woo! That was a miracle right there. About 30 minutes later, my husband asked for a painkiller, and they found fentanyl. Since they didn't try to find another painkiller, when they inserted this 3.5-inch tube, I wasn't able to be at the Albany Medical Center at that time because U.S. Immigration was handling my green card, so I was not able to get a learner permit from the DMV, and I was at hundreds of miles away from the hospital simply because they could find fentanyl. They could find it. Can you figure? It is amazing. They were able to find fentanyl. I consider what they did to my husband is called torture. Yeah, no painkiller. Ash had what the doctor called, doctor between commas, okay? The doctor called that panic attack. Okay? This morning, what he has was in fact an acid reflux chest pain, or the gastroesophageal reflux, and not a panic attack like Joe Blow said, because I happen to be a psychologist and speak 2 languages. They were treating me like, they were treating a nurse, I told you about the testimony of a nurse, how she was treated, so they were not to treat me better, for sure, because I was not working there. And even those who work there, they are treated like 2 years old child. The Albany VA Medical Center was under investigation. Part 30. November 17, 2006. They were supposed to provide an ambulance to transfer Ash from the Albany VA hospital to nearest hospital. It was a DAV van instead, and they provided a wheelchair with dried human excrement on it. Like this would not be enough, they didn't provide all the papers he needed to get his TIPS procedure to the other hospital in Albany, so his surgery was delayed 1 hour later. Instead of having it at 9 a.m., he got it at 10 a.m. I made sure they will check his ammonia level after the TEPS procedure, and I made sure they won't give him morphine. Because I had to do that, right? I was dealing with imbeciles. And by the way, the investigation has uncovered multiple crimes and violations that have put patients' lives at risk while my late husband was at the Albany Stratton VA Medical Center. They were under investigation. The Albany Stratton VA Medical Center was under investigation, Part 31st. November 18, 2006, we waited between 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. for Ash to gain his painkiller. I'm sick of this hospital. I would have understood if blood pressure would be low and or if his ammonia level wouldn't be tested, but we got the results about 6:30 p.m. and it was only at 26, and anyway they were giving him his lactulose in case his ammonia level would increase, because generally after a TEPS procedure that is the case. Like this wouldn't be enough. Of course I had to take notes while I was in this fucking hell, because I would have lost my mind. This is insane. Like it wouldn't be enough. I already said to the nurses and the doctor is able to take fentanyl like he received at the ICU. That's why he waited 4 hours to get his painkiller. It's because it was fentanyl that was to be prescribed again, meaning that they had to get a prescription first in order to get it. I can just imagine, you know, a millionaire going to a hospital and going through a surgery and waiting for 4 hours to get the fentanyl or painkiller. I could just imagine what this would cause. I thought we were at the hospital where everything is supposed to be handy in order to intervene effectively, but I guess not. I guess we were in a field somewhere. Ash had to wait for hours with an acute chest pain for no other reasons that the folks working there are not caring enough. If the VA hospitals are not better than this office in this village and the Albany Stratton VA Medical Center, I wish us to find another way for my husband to have health care. The Albany VA Medical Center was under investigation, Part 32. All right reserved you do not have the right to copy in whole or in part. November 19, 2006. My husband waited from 7:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. to get his fentanyl, alright? Do that to a millionaire or a CEO and see what happens. Or a politician and see what happens. The last time I asked about it, it was around 4 p.m. and his nurse Diane blew me off, telling me he asked his doctor. Well, I asked since about 12 p.m. and I wasn't getting results, so that wouldn't have changed anything anyway if I would have asked before 12 p.m. And she told me she has other patients to take care. Wow. The same Diane didn't get his fentanyl from 5 p.m. to about 9 p.m. the day before. I had to do something crazy to get it. But not crazy. It was not crazy. For me it was, but it was not crazy at all. It was irregular for me to do this. I was at the end of my rope, at the feet of the wall. So I put what Ash was not able to eat in the hallway. So somebody inquired very quickly, what was that? Precise quote, and I said what was going on. One of the aides, a nurse assistant, advised me to scream, to yell, but I thought it was not a good idea because I am aware that I was in the hospital and I didn't want to disturb the other patients, including my husband. I'm not like folks who are visiting someone in a hospital and acting like they would be in a bar. By the way, I didn't want somebody to stumble on it while I put in the hallway, and I was watching for making sure that would not happen from the corner of my eye, because that was not my goal, to cause a problem to somebody, because Ash was in acute pain for many hours. I must make sure, 1, Ash will get all his papers because we won't go back to the Albany VA Medical Center. Do a list. I checked and double-checked I got everything. 2, to get a DAV van for him, because what he was told is he would have to go from Albany to Syracuse and from Syracuse to home. This is insane after 2 surgeries. 3, Ash will get his lactulose, fentanyl, and another type of painkiller for home. My experience with 2 VA hospital is, it is a sample of, it's more than a sample of hell, it's hell. I'm just sick of it. Did I mention that the 8th floor of the Albany VA Medical Center was under investigation while we were there? My husband told me this was the midst of, my husband told me, and this was in the midst of November 2006. Already in 2003, there were serious issues with this VA hospital, and we were in 2006. Feds launch probe of VA hiring practices. Albany hired researcher despite revoked license. This was February 2003. BNA is continuing its investigative report about the criminal investigation of the Stratton VA Medical Center, Albany. Investigation has uncovered multiple crimes and systemic violations that have put patients' lives at risk. By M. Alexander Otto, Medical Research, Law and Policy Report, the Bureau of National Affairs, Incorporated, Washington, D.C. And I want to add that there was 2 times that he was waiting for his fentanyl. The first time was 4 hours. Okay, but first of all, he had surgery without any painkiller, 3.5 inch tube that was inserted in his body. First to his belly, second his lungs. Then I was reading that he didn't get his fentanyl. Of course, it was torture without painkiller. Then they almost killed him with morphine. And then He had to wait for his fentanyl for 4 hours, and then another time he had to wait from 7:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. to get his fentanyl. The last time I asked about it, it was around 4 p.m. and his nurse, Diane, blew me off, telling me she asked his doctor. And she told me she had other patients to take care of. The same Diane didn't get his fentanyl from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. Okay, so the previous day, from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m., she didn't get his fentanyl, and then the same Diane didn't get his fentanyl from 7:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Of course, the team didn't like me, and most of the team didn't like me much because I was taking care of my husband the best I could. And to keep me sane, I was taking notes. And those notes are accurate because I am trained as a researcher. And I always find out what I want to find out because I love the truth. The truth will set you free. The Albany VA Medical Center was under investigation, Part 33, November 31st, 2006. Mrs. Hocus Pocus, between commas, told me indirectly. Let me see, I revise a little bit. Told me indirectly that I didn't care for my husband, and that's why I don't want him to have another surgery at the Albany VA Medical Center. After all we went through, I didn't want Ashley to be stuck there anymore. And so Mrs. Hocus Pocus, November 21st, 2006, told me indirectly, that I didn't care for my husband. That's why I don't want him to have another surgery at the Albany VA Medical Center. She needs to go walk on the yellow line. This is not said literally, it is said metaphorically. Is what I should have told her for attacking me somehow in a way I couldn't sue her. All was in the manner that it was said and in the tone of the voice. The main reason why I don't want my now late husband to have another surgery is because it would be in this VA hospital on this blip 8th floor where they almost killed him 5 times in a row. Update on December 31st, 2013. I have the medical records that Ash died because of the TIPS procedure. Okay, I have in the medical records that Ash died because of the TIPS procedure went wrong, which could be possible because Ash was asking fentanyl all the time after the procedure, but I cannot rely on Dr. Nimesh Desai's words for the simple reason that he let my husband die, even though I knew that Ash was not getting the proper care at the MMH, and that's why I called the Congressman John M. McHugh, and they called the hospital officials, but the doctor, between commas, didn't change his mind, so he let Ashley die because after all of this mess he went through at the Albany VA Medical Center on the 8th floor, he didn't want to be transferred to any VA hospital, and that's the only choice they say gave him, even though the dialysis center was only at 2 miles and part of the MMH. Nimesh Desai did not even offer the dialysis. So I was working on getting a liver and decided that I was to be the living donor because our blood was compatible, so Ash body would not reject my liver. So I was working very hard on this and found out that the Georgetown University Hospital is doing that type of surgery. And I was asking the congressman to have Ash and I fly by helicopter there ASAP. I didn't want to lose Ash. Because my husband was dying and I was misled by Nimesh Desai because what Ash needed first was a dialysis. And according to Desai, the TIPS procedure went wrong. I report the words exactly like they are said. That's why I take the time to review. I think it is criminal to mislead a patient, to let him think that what you need is a liver transplant, but in fact, first of all, you need to have a dialysis, and he didn't even offer, he didn't even mention the dialysis. And it discovered after his death that the dialysis center was only at 2 miles away from the hospital and was even part of the hospital. So, according to the medical records, because the nurse was trying to shame me because I didn't want Ash to be tortured, they almost killed him 5 times in a row. So the medical records that I have and I kept preciously said that Ash died because of the TIPS procedure went wrong. Which could be possible because Ash was asking fentanyl all the times after his procedure. And also something else I want to add. Is that he turned yellow inside a week, period. After his release from the Albany VA Medical Center, 7 days, inside a week. Okay, I want to be as precise as I possibly can, so I won't say 7 days. I will say inside a week, period, he turned yellow. So because Ash refused to go to any VA hospital after being tortured that way, not to mention that they almost killed him 5 times, and finally they killed him with the TIPS procedure, and Nimesh Desai, but he did not even offer the dialysis, even though I called the congressman who was John McHugh at that time, and they called the hospital officials. Nimesh Desai didn't change his mind. So this Nimesh Desai only made one offer to Ash: either go to a VA hospital or. What Ash needed to understand was that he was to be left to die. That is what it was about. So this Nimesh Desai said on the records that Ash died because of TIPS procedure went wrong. And if this is true, and I think it is, It is only partially correct. When the VA hospital postponed his TIPS procedure, I tried to influence him to not get it, but he was sold out to the idea, because if you did hear well this journal, you will realize that all of this started because his lungs were filled with liquid, and he was drowning in his own liquid, and his lungs could collapse at any time, and he was scared that would happen to him again, and that is what this TIPS procedure was supposed to avoid, or at least it is what they convince him of that would fix it. So he was convinced to get it, no matter how I was scared for him to be on this blip 8th floor of the Albany VA Medical Center. And his main doctor there was Dr. Raymond Smith. Because we almost all blew up one time because they didn't mind to have this addicted to cigarettes near the tank of oxygen. I told this to the social workers, Lori Boberski, and that this addicted to cigarettes visitor was around the oxygen tank. Now I understand why I'm writing things down and reading it, because it is so overwhelming, to say the very least. So this addicted to cigarettes visitor was around the oxygen tank asking for cigarettes, and he had lighters with him, and she did not do anything. What the fuck? But there are limits to my tolerance of absolute stupidity. This was part 33. The Albany VA Medical Center was under investigation, part 34. Well, November 24, 2006, I was thinking the one I was calling God, which is a title that my husband is alive. November 24, 2006, I was thanking God, the title. It's just a title. And I call the creator of the universe that my husband is alive, because there is 2 veterans who died on this floor in a month. One of them was Mr. Ken Abramson. I have kept the price shopper card I was using, and also I was thinking the supposedly father is out of there. That was joy, that was just I should not have had. Okay, so updated January 12, 2014. That means that he left the Albany Stratton Medical Center, VA Medical Center, that day, November 24, 2006. The Albany VA Medical Center was under investigation, part 35. November 27, 2006. The Albany VA Medical Center gave him the instructions about drugs. They didn't tell me he will need my help after his release to manage the drugs, so I discovered the hard way this morning because Ash started to have problems, real problems. So it was not only inside a week from his release, it was way before that. See, he was released on November 24, 2006, and already on November 27, 2006, he was having problems. Ashley started to have problems, real problems. So I ran to the kitchen and gave him a triple dose of lactulose. This is what they did at the intensive care unit when he was in coma. They gave him intensive doses of lactulose, a triple dose, through his nose. So I knew it was safe. I know Ash is very intelligent, and that's why I was letting him managing the drugs. But I realized even if you're a genius, Ashley had the IQ of 169. If you are weak, then you cannot manage that. The ammonia was eating the brain again. You need to recover first, and then you can manage your drugs. Ash is so tired because he was having nausea for 3 hours for about 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. And I just realized to have nausea in this case means his ammonia level is high. In fact, the Albany VA Medical Center did another mistake. Ashley was on absolutely no salt diet. And now, because like I told you previously, they finally changed his diet from high protein diet to no salt diet at the end of his hospitalization to hell. Ashley was on now he was on absolutely no salt diet. And now one of his drugs is salt-based because his system lacked too much of it. So don't ask me what to understand from what the Albany VA Medical Center is doing. They sure don't know themselves. So, by the way, I'm so glad and happy I don't have to beg a nurse to give him lactulose anymore. I knew it was what he needed this morning, and if I would go to the hospital, I would most likely have to beg for lactulose until Ash would be at least in coma or maybe dead. All I have to do is give him. Yes, the reason I didn't run to the VA hospital is I know there is a big likelihood I would have to beg for lactulose until he would be coma like it happened before at the Albany VA hospital. I had to beg Diane M. Ekman, E-H-M-A-N-N, and she had to go coma at the intensive care unit to get his lactulose like I was requesting. Update December 31st, 2013. Ash was released on November 24th and he turned yellow on November 27th and his arm and legs were shaking. Was a sign his liver was shutting down 3 days after being released from the Albany VA Medical Center. Even though I didn't trust the hospitals anymore, I had to call the ambulance because it was very hard for me to see him in the States. He didn't want to go. He didn't want to go. I had to go against his will, unfortunately, and it was sad. It was very hard for me to see Ashley in the state. I couldn't take it anymore to see him that weak, and he could not eat, and his kidneys were on their way to shut down. And again, the dialysis was not even offered. It was not even offered by Dr. Nimesh Desai, like I already explained previously, even though I called the Congressman John McHugh's office and they called the hospitals and the dialysis center was only 2 miles from the hospital, and part of it, that was the Massena Memorial Hospital, by the way. So I was the third woman becoming a widow, even though I was sad for Mrs. Abramson because he died simply because they did not bring the oxygen tank on time, so he had time to end up at the ICU in coma and die there. But it turned out that I was becoming a widow myself. In other words, Mr. Abramson, he needed to be on oxygen tank. This was a non-fact. And they didn't bring the oxygen tank. It turned out that I was myself becoming a widow. Thanks for listening. I usually do not mention to please subscribe and please talk about my channel to the people you care about and those who can benefit from it, but because it's obvious to me, I didn't think I had to say that.